Uh, okay, let me think. Albeit it's not used very often. It means something like although, and it's as a conjunction. It's a relatively formal one. It means despite the fact that this thing is the case, um, this other thing, or it means although. So in this case, it offers a series of snapshots of important ideas and areas of work brought together as an introduction, although an inevitably brief and incomplete one, um, could almost work there, though might work as well. So it's what it is it's a partial qualification, albeit is like introducing a qualification in a context like this. Um, you know, I'm going to suggest a course of action for our department, albeit one that is informed only by anecdotes and not by rigorous study. So you're saying that here's this thing, but there's a partial qualification that I want to give to it. It's not entirely as good as it could be, or it's not as complete as it could be, or it's narrower in some way.
So,
If you're surveying a whole field of study, like a whole discipline, and you're giving someone snapshots of important ideas and areas of work, you're giving them brief, momentary, like, here is an example of this thing. Here is an example of this thing. You're not piecing together all of the connections between all of those ideas and areas of work. Um,
I got
so,
it. Perfect.
so, albeit inevitably brief and incomplete. So they're saying that this is an unavoidable qualification, inevitable, but also that this is an important qualification that they want to share. They're not offering us everything we might ever want to know about the field of public archaeology. They're
So,
offering us.
so you also mentioned that also and though both of them can be correct, but we should have a comma or something.
Mm, I feel like albeit works better than although here, but you could use both although or though
Mhm.
as well. Either of them would be fine here.
We don't need
Yeah.
a comma after also or though.
No, you don't. Not in this case.
Okay. And
So this becomes it's like a parenthetical. So you could imagine that these two commas are like parentheses, like brackets. So it's like someone saying, we're giving you this series of snapshots as an introduction. Um, Even though this introduction is brief and incomplete, you're imagining that's in brackets to one of the most challenging and rewarding parts of archaeology. So it's like an aside or something to keep in mind, not the main part of the sentence. Yeah. So they've created a parenthetical um, clause or
perfect.
yeah,
I got it. Uh,
for yeah.
so okay.
Um, yeah, so we don't use commas after although.
So is it a rule? I mean, because I'm not sure. So we shouldn't use comma after also.
With conjunction it is. We don't need it it's like but or and. We don't usually need a comma after those. We sometimes use a comma before them though.
Mhm. Yeah, great.
Mhm.
Perfect.
A good working understanding is it's kind of like saying you'll know enough to
Like an experienced
to
person
use that knowledge,
in the
but
practice.
you won't have expert knowledge. A working understanding is like enough knowledge to work with and to use in many circumstances, but not all of the knowledge.
So
This is a complicated, rich, and diverse field. Um, so it's you'll understand this thing as being these
yeah.
things.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
From
while
cover
you
to cover, everything that's between the covers.
oh between
So
the two
yeah,
covers. Okay,
yeah, cover to cover. Yeah.
I got it. And okay, and you will have make sense to be honest for me. So,
So, so, so it's about a field of study. So they want to give you enough of an understanding of the field as a whole to know to 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 start to use that understanding, um, but also to recognize that it's got complexity and it's diverse. So they're trying to offer you enough to then go on and do more things, but also enough to recognize the limitations of your knowledge, probably. Have a working understanding of something. I could say I've got a working understanding of programming in Python, would be quite different from me saying I'm an expert in programming in Python, or I understand, all of the main Python modules very well. Um, so a good working understanding is a good overall picture that you could use for your thinking, but not the assumption of expertise. Yeah. Yeah. And I think as well as is needed here, because we've already got a list with and in it, a complicated, rich, and diverse field and knowledge of. So it would be a little confusing. It would seem like that and was being appended. So they're saying as well as to introduce a different kind of knowledge of some of the most significant and iconic examples. Yeah. So, but they're using as well as to break up these two major items that you get from, so you get a good working understanding as well as knowledge of significant and iconic examples. Um, it's precisely because they've used and within each of those categories of thing that they're joining them with as well as to remove some of the ambiguity. So these are examples. So we've got the field, which is the way that that field understands the world. It's the knowledge of how, whereas this is the knowledge of what. Um, you're right, it's not a strong contrast. You could imply that the richness and diversity includes these examples, but what they're trying to do is kind of advertise the book's contents, talk about what you get from it. You get the principles, you get the understanding of the field, but you also get examples of the thing that the field studies. Public archaeologists, maybe part of what makes their field complicated is that it, um, yeah, is that it probably involves a range of different ways of interacting with the public, or assumed purposes for what they're studying. So some of them would be connected to community interests. Some of them would be trying to educate students or educate members of the public in a way that you might educate students. So it's diverse in its purposes. It's diverse in its ideas. There's probably multiple theories that are used for understanding the past through archaeology. Um, but then there are also lots of specific concrete examples. So there would be actual public archaeology projects that have been significant or even iconic. Um, yeah, so famous, recognizable, prominent. Um, I think the difference here is between the field of study and and the and the actual, yeah, the actual projects that are practiced. So one of them is more about the ideas that inform it and maybe the methods that are used. One of them is about actual projects. And because it's public archaeology, some of these projects would be, like, let's say Pompeii, the ruins at Pompeii. That's both a major, yeah, I think um so that's both a working archaeological site and a public kind of tourist destination. So I would expect this would be talked about in that book that we're looking at as an iconic example. Yeah, I guess publicly most recognizable
Hmm,
or prominent.
exactly. I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. And this is, we don't have any problem with that one, I think. But yeah, but I think, yeah, however, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Adam.
This use of however is an interesting one.
Yeah, please tell us.
Um, because if you said however, comma, there'd be a contrast with what you've just said. But in this case, it's however, as in whichever way that you use this book. So they're suggesting that you can use the book in more than one way.
Oh,
However you
okay.
use this book, so whichever way you use this book, whichever mode of reading,
It doesn't have a
um,
contrast,
that's right.
meaning,
There's no contrast from the previous. There's a set of options, and it's saying we kind of don't care which way you do it,
oh,
but
perfect. I didn't
if
know that. Thank
you'll
you.
get this from it. Yeah.
Thank you for telling us. Thank you very much.